Hey, welcome to Spectral Echoes, a collection of Reddit stories as told by people high as a kite. But it's Reddit, who knows, right? If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, so you don't miss out on these awesome horror stories. Now, let's get started.
You toy with the rules of ancient rituals, salt mirrors, midnight incantations. Maybe nothing happens, or maybe you offend the unnameable. One mirror in abandoned church. I looked in that mirror, and now I'm not me. I don't expect anyone to believe me. You might think this is some kind of psychosis, or about a travel-related paranoia, or a gimmick to get engagement. I don't blame you. My parents, friends, and doctors all thought so. Anyway, I wanted to think so, even tried to convince myself, until I saw the mirror reflecting something that wasn't me. I'll start from the beginning. It all started last fall when I was traveling to the French countryside with a group of close friends. We stopped in a small village near Montignac, which didn't have many hotels, so we rented a cabin in the woods and camped for a few days. That night, after a few beers and a bunch of ghost stories around a campfire, Thomas, the creepy guy, told us about St. Belos, an abandoned church nearby. He said there was a test of courage, like a French version of Bloody Mary. At exactly midnight, you go up to the altar, look into the cracked old mirror in the middle of the altar, and say, "Je suis venu seul." I came alone. Thomas said there was a legend that if you say that and don't turn around, the mirror will show you your true nature. But very few people dare, because some people have gone insane or committed suicide. Everyone laughed. I was shivering. I've never been into ghost jokes like that, partly because I don't find them funny, and partly because I've always had a certain fear of ghosts and other spiritual forces. At first I refused. I wasn't into seances or anything superstitious like that. But when they started challenging me with things like "no way," or "are you afraid the mirror will see what you're hiding?" and I, like an impulsive idiot, agreed. We walked through the forest, more like a deserted bushland with sparse vegetation, but enough to block the way. After nearly an hour, we came to a ruined stone building, overgrown with moss and vines. The Church of St. Belos, or so we believed. It was not like the big, beautiful churches we saw on television. No, it was even like the small neighborhood churches we visited every week. It was just a dilapidated house with a cross on the roof, tilted to one side by the erosion of time and the ravages of wind and rain. There was no iron door or lock, just a wooden door with peeling paint, lying on its side, opening into a dark space. Inside, it was damp. The smell of rotting lime and burnt wood reminded us of what was once sacred and now rotten. The mirror in the middle of the altar, larger than I had expected. The frame was rusty iron. The mirror surface was wavy, with a spiderweb-like crack running down the left side. I turned on my phone, used a flashlight to shine, and lit 2 small candles. The candles took a long time to burn, causing the wax to melt, almost falling on my feet. My hands were shaking, almost throwing it away. Thinking back, maybe God and the angels were trying to protect me at that time. But no, the candles finally burned. I breathed a sigh of relief and put them in the right place. They stood below, holding their cameras and shouting, "Go up." I pretended to be okay, slowly walking over. My voice trembled slightly as I said, "Je suis venu seul." At that moment, my phone went dead. The screen went black, even though the battery had just shown that it was over 70%. I blinked. Cold wind blew through the cracks in the broken glass. A faint echo. It could have been my own voice echoing back, or not. Something seemed strange, or not. I don't know. I was vaguely pushed aside, making room for Thomas and the others to try. Still nothing happened. Everyone laughed, teased each other, and wanted to leave. I breathed a sigh of relief. I really wanted to go, but stopped out of some strange habit or some devilish impulse, and glanced at the mirror one last time. And the person in the mirror seemed to wink at me. But clearly I wasn't. I stood still. But the image in the mirror didn't match up. like it was off by half a beat. And it laughed. I spun around. No one saw anything. The image in the mirror synchronized again, but I still pulled the guy next to me in a desperate attempt to see if he saw anything. "What's wrong?" "The mirror must be crooked," Thomas laughed. "You're really out of your mind." I swallowed, trying to force a dry laugh but failing. I couldn't convince myself to believe Thomas. I couldn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. When I dozed off, I dreamed that I was standing inside the mirror, looking out through the frosted glass. Outside, my friends were eating breakfast, telling stories, laughing. And another me was sitting with them. I screamed. No one heard. The next morning, I woke up covered in sweat. In the small rented room, the mirror hanging on the wall reflected my face, smiling crookedly, a creepy and clearly abnormal smile. I blinked, and the mirror returned to normal. We continued our journey. I pretended to be fine, but the little things kept going wrong. At the coffee shop in town, I looked in the toilet mirror and saw my reflection standing still, not moving at all, even though I turned around. When taking group photos, I was always a little blurry, out of focus, or looking the other way. No one noticed, except me, rather. I tried to remind them, and everyone looked at me with a, "Dude, you're overreacting. It's just not a good photo." Look, they said it was the lighting and the angle, or that the camera was too crappy. That's all, but I knew it wasn't. Still, I kept my mouth shut. The weirdest thing started when I couldn't remember my mother's phone number. People might not understand. After all, a lot of people don't bother to remember these things for a long time. But I was different. I had memorized it since I was 2 years old. And just now, when a friend asked about the cat I had raised since I was a child, I couldn't remember its name. I felt like my brain was being controlled by someone else, like a processor that was weakening, being taken over by another process. I don't know why. Just before that, I logged into my email to check the school news. I entered it instinctively, but then I couldn't remember my email anymore. Things were getting worse. Friday night at the hotel. Remember, we rented a cabin in the woods for a few days, but it turned out to be less than pleasant, and we had to rent a small hotel instead. The last night, I looked in the mirror. It was crazy, but I wanted to confirm it one last time. I raised my hand, and the me in the mirror had raised my hand before, not quickly, but completely before. The memory behind is a hazy fragment. I only remember hitting the mirror hard, with my whole hand, my whole head, and all the strength of my body. The glass shattered. I screamed. My friends came running. The hotel manager, I guess because he looked strange, rushed in too. Then I blacked out. But even so, I heard it. They called me unstable. They wanted to send me back home. And the mirror was still intact, unbroken, even though I had certainly destroyed it. I don't remember how I got to the airport, but when I called my mother to tell her I was leaving, she called me by my middle name, something I never used. When I responded, she was startled and told me that I was the one who had said that a few days earlier. Friends told stories I didn't remember, places I had never been. One evening, I told jokes all through dinner. I remember sitting there saying nothing. The worst part was when I couldn't see myself in the mirror anymore. Only it, a pale copy, standing in the wrong direction, eyes unblinking, a strange smile, and it knew I was looking. I tried to remember everything, not to tell it, but to keep myself. I wrote it down, not just for you to read, but for me to read again, every morning, every night, before bed, before taking my medicine. Bonus. My name is Ethan L. I was born on March 12, 1994. Blood type O+. I have no serious allergies. I am right-handed, but I learned to write with my left hand when I was a kid. I hate the smell of coconut, and I often feel nauseous if I see anyone chewing on desiccated coconut. My mother's name is Claire. My father's name is Daniel. He died of a stroke in the bathroom in 2016. I have a cat named Jupiter, but apparently not. Do I have him? I rewrote these words many times. Maybe 100 times on the wallpaper, on the edge of the refrigerator, on my sleeve. Something was wrong. Not wrong like in horror movies. Not the kind of wrong that people grow horns on or see ghosts in broad daylight. Silently wrong. The kind of wrong that you don't dare tell anyone because you're afraid they won't believe you. I saw myself in the mirror and it turned out the other way around. I know it's true. I remember his hand slowing down, then speeding up. I remember his left eye blinking. I remember his smile, not mine. It was crooked. There's no reason for me to imagine that, but I was the one who smashed a mirror in the Paris hotel, and no one saw it break. I was the one who couldn't remember the name of the cat I believed was mine. I was the one who scared my friends by screaming in a public toilet, because the person in the mirror wouldn't move. Am I wrong? Maybe. Maybe it was all just stress, paranoia, travel sickness. I talked to a psychiatrist. I took medication. And honestly, sometimes I felt better. But sometimes I sat in the middle of the night, looking at the curtain covering the mirror in my bedroom and listening to the breathing behind it. I put a camera in front of the mirror. It ran for 6 hours. When I watched it back, I saw myself sitting on the bed, not moving. But there were 3 seconds, just 3 seconds, from 3:03 to 3:06 a.m., where the camera angle was slightly off. As if someone had tweaked it slightly. I sent the video to my friends. They said they didn't see anything. I rewinded it over and over again. And then I started wondering, did I tweak the camera while I was dreaming? I don't dare go out too far. I don't look in the glass windows. I turn off the TV and cover with a cloth when I turn off the lights. I put black paper on every reflective surface. The fridge, the kettle, the glass clock. I try to live by a schedule. I get up at 7:30. I eat cereal and bananas for breakfast. I've put my grades on hold for now, but I'll go back next semester. I swear. See? I know what I'm doing. I have a reason. I have discipline. I'm not crazy. But I'm the one who sheds tears when I see my reflection in the spoon, pursing my lips while I'm opening my mouth. And when I turn the wall, so I don't have to look at the spoon anymore, there's a soft laugh from the sink. The doctor calls it dissociative symptoms. I'm on risperidone, a mild antipsychotic. Sometimes I feel better. The whispers are gone. The dreams are gone. But that's when I find it most frightening. Because if I really am sick, then it's all over, right? But what if it knows that I'm doubting myself and it deliberately retreats, waiting for me to let my guard down? What if it just pretends to be gone so that I can conclude, I really am hallucinating? And then, when I'm convinced that it's all pathological, it comes out completely and takes over whatever remains of me. I think about that every time I take my medicine. I don't want to go crazy, but I don't want to forget either. Sometimes, I think about that night at St. Belos. I think, maybe it was just a distorted mirror, the light reflected wrongly. Maybe I didn't get enough sleep. Maybe the alcohol and peer pressure triggered a latent crisis. But why am I the only one affected? I can't be sure I'm still me, but I can't be sure I'm not either. So I write it down here in detail, clearly, to remind myself that I'm real. That if anyone reads this, at least a part of me once existed.
2. The Gatekeeper. I'm not sure who I am anymore. I started this piece many times, only to be interrupted by a simple sentence. You're remembering wrong. And maybe it's true. Maybe what I'm about to tell you is a hallucination, a sleep disorder, an unresolved trauma. But maybe I'm right, and I'm trying to hold on to the last bit of me before it, this thing that shares my body, takes me over completely. I'm almost 30, a remote copywriter. I live alone, eat healthy, get regular checkups, have no history of mental illness. On paper, I'm fine, but in reality, I'm not. There are days when I wake up and don't know what day it is. There are stories I tell friends, and they say I've told them before, in a completely different way. There are files on my laptop that I've written halfway through, but don't remember typing them out. There are mornings when I wake up in clothes I never would have chosen to wear. And it all started with a little game, a silly game that kids compete to play in 8th grade. A game called The Gatekeeper. In 8th grade, I was a quiet kid, not exactly bullied, or at least not that blatantly. But being left out of every joke, every group chat, every birthday party was enough to make me dizzy. I would secretly record the voices and sounds of the people around me to listen to, not because I liked them, but to imagine myself fitting in. I stayed in my room, posters covering the windows, left the night light on all night, and learned to minimize my presence as much as possible. I didn't want to get punched, or locked in the bathroom, or anything like that. Josh was one of the few people who was nice to me, at least remember my name, and invited me to his party. That night, at Josh's house, during a snack and Coca-Soaked sleepover, Josh told the group about a mysterious game from his brother, Gatekeeper. According to him, if you draw a door in a room with white chalk, and then say exactly 3 times, "Doorkeeper, I'm here to change places," then something will come. It won't appear right away, but at some point, it will start living for you, and you'll get more rest, but at the same time, you will lose some control of your body. His exact words. I didn't feel scared. On the contrary, I felt relieved. If someone wanted to live for me, please do. At that time, I thought, at least I won't have to live 24 hours a day with a head that is always heavy as a rock. I don't remember the date I drew the door. Rather, now that I think back, it's like a fog. I have a feeling it was raining that day. The walls were a little damp, the chalk smudged a little. But I tried. I drew the hinges, the handle, the door jamb, as Josh had said. I turned off the light. I sat on the floor. I repeated the phrase 3 times. "Doorkeeper, I've come to change places." I can't say I was expecting anything, but at the same time I was expecting something. Like I was hoping something would happen, but it didn't. At least, nothing happened at that moment. The air in the room was at most a little thick, probably because I had the flu. The same silence, which lingered for quite a while. I didn't wait any longer. I crawled under the covers and told myself, "You are who you are, nothing else." But they did come. About 3 days later, I dreamed that I was walking down a dark hallway, with handleless doors on either side, as if drawn with faint charcoal on black paper. In the dream, I heard footsteps behind me, not too close, but not far enough to ignore. And then, a whisper from ahead, "Your turn." I woke up. My nightgown was dusty, as if I had knelt to mop the floor. There were white chalk marks on the sleeves. I didn't redraw the door. I was sure I wouldn't touch it again. But apparently, the other me did. The first gaps in my memory began to appear. Not to be conceited, but my memory was pretty good. I used to remember every class, every movie, every book I read. There was nothing else to do. But then I started to wonder if I had actually experienced something, or if I'd just been told about it. The teacher handed back my essay and complimented me. "Your ending was very creative." I don't remember writing that ending. No, I didn't even write that essay. I didn't do it. My deskmate also asked, "You told a great joke yesterday. Why are you so quiet today?" I didn't tell anything about yesterday. I remember sitting at the back of the classroom, looking out the window, imagining it was raining. There were days when I went to school, and after school, I couldn't remember what I had done all morning. But my clothes were still straight, my school bag was still complete, and the writing in my notebook was still mine. But the writing was slightly slanted to the left. While I am right-handed, and especially the mirrors are the most wrong, they no longer reflect me accurately. To be clear, I have not liked looking in mirrors since I was a child, but I have never experienced anything as terrible as this. One time, I stood in the school toilet, looking at the mirror unconsciously. I raised my left hand. The reflection also raised its left hand. My reflection was skewed. Apparently, it was smiling while I was frowning. I screamed and ran outside, standing in the sun, among friends, among car horns. No one understood why I was panicking, but I kept quiet, not daring to say anything more, because when everyone was there, everything was normal as if it had never happened. It deliberately showed it to me alone. I spent a long time with the pressure and extreme fear of what I had invited. Every night, I did not dare to sleep, but at the same time I could not resist the fatigue. During the day, I was lethargic and then bright as if nothing had happened. That's what my friend said, but I don't remember. And then, I sleepwalked and felt trapped inside myself. According to my parents, I started sleepwalking in 9th grade. I woke up at the foot of the stairs, in the kitchen, under the desk, one night, and I remember it clearly. I woke up with my hand, writing something on the wall. I couldn't control my hand. I didn't feel like it was my hand, but I saw it from the inside, through my own eye sockets, like a passenger in a train, unable to steer. I tried to talk to my parents, but it didn't seem to help. They still cared about me, I knew, but on a physical level, not a mental level. My mother comforted me that I was too tired lately. My father was even more nonchalant, saying that my grandfather had also sleepwalked when he was a child, so it must be genetic. When I grew up, he assured me. I was desperate, not knowing what else to say. However, because I was sleepwalking, my parents put a camera in my room. I agreed to this because I thought, if I watch it again, I will see the evidence, I will prove, or at least understand what I did. The camera recorded me getting up in the middle of the night or early morning, not fixed but extremely regular, walking towards the wall where the door was painted. I knocked 3 times, softly, and the wall made a small click, not loud, but very clear. I replayed it many times. Sometimes when I finished replaying, I forgot why I replayed it. I found myself more absent-minded, but everything else was good. I studied better, adapted to the high school environment very quickly, even made friends. Not close, but much better than in high school. And so, I tacitly accepted this, no longer trying to prove it to anyone. Everything seemed fine until I met Josh again. Since we didn't go to high school together, we hadn't been in touch for years. Meeting Josh again at the pharmacy was just a coincidence, but it was enough to shock me deeply. He was no longer the same. His eyes were absent-minded, his hair was messy, his skin was pale like someone who had been sick for a long time. I took the initiative to greet him, to be polite and avoid mentioning the matter, even though a part of me was screaming to ask. Josh didn't answer. He looked at me for a long time, as if staring into an old layer of memory, then said softly, "Do you remember the doorkeeper?" I was silent as an admission. He immediately confirmed, "You saw him, right? He used your eyes, but not his thoughts." My spine went cold. Josh said that he had tried to change it back. He used his blood to redraw the door, but he refused to return it all. Now, every time he slept, he felt like his consciousness was no longer in his body, but somewhere cold, dark, and waiting forever without waking up. I said goodbye to it in confusion, half believing, half doubting. Part of me knew our experiences were similar, even it reacted more strongly than me. But the rest was hard to say, because I heard Josh had been sent to mental hospitals several times, and now he was labeled as having psychological problems, a mental patient. I suddenly thought, those who are said to be paranoid, perhaps because they see things others cannot see. But at the same time, if so, am I like them, a mental patient? Anyway, I no longer panic like before. I don't scream when I see a skewed reflection in the elevator. I don't try to explain dreams about dark hallways and door handles. I learned to program myself to exactly 8 hours a day. I sleep 8 hours. I work 8 hours. The remaining 8 hours, I don't remember who I am. I eat on time. I pay my bills on time. I write on time. But sometimes I wake up in the middle of the day in a coffee shop I've never been to, or I get a phone call from someone calling me by a name that's not mine. Luckily, I play the normal person pretty well. The other me does it even better.
3. Laughing charm. My sister is not crazy. I want to believe that. I kept quiet because I knew no one would believe me, and sometimes I even doubted it myself. And I am not writing this to ask for help. I just want to speak out to release the pressure that has been weighing on my heart for years. This story is about my cousin Lise, and the one thing we should never touch, a laughing stock she found in a rotting barn in rural southern Missouri. Lise was what people used to describe as a summer breeze or a joy in the kitchen. She was always laughing, warm, gentle, and comforting. She knew when to be quiet, when to make a joke. I remember Christmas Eves when Lise was 13, making everyone laugh with just a few imaginary stories about cats and hats. Life wasn't easy for Lise though. She went through a lot of things from family to love and more. I'll tell you the details later. But Lise stood firm. So when people started saying that Lise was not okay, I was the last person to believe it. Not because I was naive, but because I heard things she didn't tell anyone else. The summer Lise was 19, her father and she went to clean up their ancestral home, which had been vacant since the 1960s, in the suburbs of Advance, Missouri, an hour's drive from the nearest town. It was so quiet that you could hear insects gnawing at tree roots through the wooden walls, something that was definitely not the case where we lived. Lise told me, over a blurry video call, that she had found an old cloth bag as small as a matchbox, tucked into the wallboard of the shed. It was tied with red thread, and inside was a piece of paper so yellowed that it fell apart when opened. I remember her words verbatim. It was written in handwriting, scrawled like something from an ancient spell book. It said, "Happiness smiles on those who smile. Share it properly." She laughed afterward, saying it must have been the guardian angel of the countryside. I laughed along, but inside I felt uncomfortable. I've always been of the opinion that you shouldn't mess with spiritual beliefs, no matter what. So I told her to put it away and move on. She nodded, but I'm not sure how she handled it. I'd even forgotten about it. However, even after a long time, I did not connect with that amulet. Remember when I said that Lise had not had an easy life? Indeed. Her parents' marriage was not happy, and her mother even suffered from post-divorce depression, which must have had a big impact on her. She was bullied by her friends for many years, apparently because her parents did not care enough. And not long after returning from the old house, she broke up with her lover. They had been in a relationship for almost 6 years, for some reason I do not know. Finally, the biggest shock, her grandmother passed away. Grandma was the only person who truly loved Lise, and her passing was so sudden she died of a stroke, leaving us all in shock, especially Lise. I didn't attend the funeral and only listened to my father tell the story. Lise sat there, eyes wide open, not red, not teary. But when the eulogy was read, she burst out laughing. Not loudly but clearly. She tried to cover her mouth, but still shook from the uncontrollable laughter. In between sobs, she laughed so hard. Her father had to drag her out of the church. I thought she was crazy, my father said. I didn't believe it or didn't want to believe it. Anyway, I texted Lise afterwards. She was silent for a long time. Then she just said, "I couldn't control it. At first it was fun. Then, it was like the laughter wasn't coming from me. It was through me." Lise told me she started laughing more. At first it was the usual stuff. A squirrel slipping, a neighbor backing into a trash can. But now, it's not funny. At the moment, I still think she is under too much pressure. But everything will be fine, I believe. Anyway, when she texted me, she was still very normal. But things quickly got worse, starting with the sound. Lise talks fearfully about the phone ringing at 2 a.m. No name, no number, only a soft laugh like from behind the curtains. The laptop turns on by itself in the middle of the night, the radio, the MP4 player. Everywhere is that creepy laugh she describes in horror. I called her on FaceTime once. The screen was blurry, but the sound was Lisa's unending laughter. I shouted her name. No one answered, just laughter, like from an endless tunnel. It took almost a minute for everything to come back to normal. "That charm, did it curse you?" She asked me through tears, and I didn't know how to answer. On the one hand, I thought she was completely normal. But on the other hand, we had very little contact, mostly text messages or phone calls, and the story I heard was very different. Even so, the fear of that laughing charm or something else had crept deep into my heart. It didn't stop there. Lise was suspended from school for disordered behavior. She was forced to go to the doctor and was diagnosed with atypical bipolar disorder. The doctor prescribed psychotherapy and antipsychotics. Now the whole world called her the patient. The people around her began to fear and avoid her, including her parents. But when Lise texted me, she was painfully clear-headed. "Everyone thinks I'm crazy. But if I'm crazy, why does the radio turn on when I haven't touched it? Why does the tape recorder play when I laugh? Why does mommy hear it downstairs when I'm upstairs?" I didn't know what to do, but I wanted to believe Lise. I wanted to help her, even if it was just a little. I asked her mother, my aunt, if she had ever heard the TV or radio like Lise said. Unfortunately, the answer was no. I even asked Lisa's friends at school, and the answer was still no. But I had clearly heard that strange sound too, and I was sure it wasn't something Lise or a human could make. I was confused and a little scared, afraid that I would be treated like Lise. And lo and behold, I, like everyone else, began to think she was crazy. I met Lise on a rainy day in October. She had changed. Her eyes were sunken. Her features were drawn by an invisible smile. She laughed softly, hoarsely, as if she had had a sore throat for a month. I turned on the recorder. "I know you don't believe it." "I do." "No. You thought me was crazy too. Of course, I just wanted to show you. I'm glad you weren't dragged in." She spoke sadly, more sincere and sober than ever. "But this laughter, it lives because of you laughing. If you stay silent, it will speak for you. I was confused and asked, "Who is it?" Lise didn't answer. She just looked straight into my eyes, pursed her lips, and didn't smile. Surprisingly, she didn't smile during that half hour. Of course, neither did I. Just chatting the same old stories. When I got home, I listened to the recording again. Everything was normal except for one thing: the laughter rang out twice. Normal, right? Maybe Lise and I forgot and laughed at some point. But I remember clearly, no. I don't dare tell anyone about this anymore. And Lise is now in the hospital. Her file says mentally unstable. She didn't say anything more. Just smiled. Always smiled. People put relaxing music on her, covered her ears, gave her medicine. But at night, the nurse still skipped her shift, because she said she heard someone else laughing with her in the room, even though no one was in. The family almost cut off contact, only I still kept everything I could about her, especially in my subconscious. I kept every text message, video call, and especially the recording file from that day. I didn't dare to go and determine where that amulet was. I didn't want to be its next victim. But at the same time, I still had a strong belief that Lise wasn't crazy. She was still normal but chose to endure to protect us. Update: you asked why I didn't testify or vouch for her. I can only say basically I couldn't. First, during that time and before, Lise had gone through a lot of shock, enough to drive many people crazy. Not to mention her paternal family has a history of mental disorders, even suicide due to depression. Third, I have no other evidence other than her private messages to me, which no one but me believes. And finally, the doctor's conclusion is something that cannot be intervened. As a cousin, I have no guardianship or anything similar to be able to do so. And that, I'm also afraid, I haven't even taken care of myself to be able to guarantee support for her. Call me a coward, go ahead. Also, I don't know if I should say this, but at that time, the doctor's diagnosis was quite helpful. Lise was suspended not only because she laughed too much, but also because she attacked another student. I don't know much about the details, but if she is found to be sane, she will definitely have to go to court and pay a large sum of money. You understand, right?
If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, so you don't miss out on these awesome horror stories.